Hello, you've wandered into a place where history doesn't rush, where kingdoms rise like soft dreams, and fall without a fuss. Tonight, we'll drift through the story of a forgotten land, a place so patient, they once taxed rain in seashells. But before we begin, a quiet warning. You probably won't make it through this day, and that's perfectly fine. The kingdom of Warera can wait for you. Time moves differently here. If you enjoy slow histories, sleepy storytelling, and strange facts that gently unravel, please consider tapping that like button, or subscribing to join us again soon. We'd love to know where you're watching from, so leave a comment with your location, and the time right now, wherever you are in the world. It's oddly comforting to see how far and wide our sleepy little empire reaches now. Take a deep breath, let your eyes grow heavy, and let's ease into tonight's journey, the Lost Kingdom, where rain was taxed in shells. You arrive just before dawn. The sky is the color of old parchment soaked gently in tea, and the air smells like wet thatch and yesterday's cooking smoke. You hear a slow, rhythmic creak as someone draws water from a heavy wooden bucket beside a sleeping hut. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster gives a lazy, half-hearted crow, as if even the birds aren't convinced this day is worth starting. The soil beneath your bare feet is damp and spongy, and the earth exhales quietly beneath you. You're in the kingdom of Warera. You haven't heard of it. That's all right. Most people haven't. Its name doesn't thunder through history books, and there are no movies with sweeping orchestral scores about its noble fall. But once, nestled in the mist-heavy tropics along what is now an unnamed bend in Central Africa, this kingdom lived and breathed, with real people, real worries, and real oddities, including, yes, the small fact that they taxed rain in shells. You probably won't make it through this day. This is your quiet invitation to like and subscribe gently, of course. No flashy buttons. Just a warm welcome to this sleepy little corner of time. And if you're awake enough to lift your fingers, let us know your city and your local time down in the comments. We love knowing who's dozing where. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The kingdom is only beginning to stir. You walk along a path lined with snail shells and slippery leaves, careful not to wake the goats tied under basket-roofed porches. In Warera, time is measured less in hours and more in chores. You notice how no one really hurries except for one boy, carrying a bowl of fermented millet. That bowl is for the village elder, and being late means sitting in silence while the elder stares at you until your soul disintegrates. One of the strange customs here, though strange is relative, is that rainfall is counted, not in inches or millimeters, but in cowrie shells, which the Warians collect after every storm, assigning each downpour a shell value, as if clouds were accountants and thunder a billing system. You wonder if their weather prophets moonlight as IRS agents. This rain tax is pooled in carved gourd bowls and redistributed depending on how wet your hut got last month. It sounds complicated, because it is. Historians still debate whether this system was mostly symbolic, or if someone actually got evicted over a drizzle. The village center smells like smoked fish and burnt resin. A man sharpens a long, curved knife, but not for war. He's peeling bark from a medicine tree. A toddler tries to eat a beetle the size of your thumb. Her grandmother gently plucks it from her mouth and pops it into her own no-waste. No judgment. By mid-morning, you find yourself watching the tax shell counters, a group of women in dyed cotton wraps with intricate patterns that tell stories of rivers, marriages, and one rather detailed image of a chicken stealing yams. They sit in a circle beneath a canopy of palm fronds, counting and muttering. Their work is part accounting, part gossip, and part theater. Every shell has to be verified. Every household's rainfall tally scrutinized. It's not unlike the modern office environment, if your office had goats occasionally nibbling on the spreadsheets. A major historical fact, Warera is one of the few known pre-colonial societies to use rain an entirely uncontrollable and divine force as a taxable commodity tied to community redistribution. Think of it like a hydrological socialism powered by cloud drama. The village drum begins, its slow, thudding beat, signaling the start of the story market. People gather not to buy goods, but to swap tales. One old man swears the rain last week carried voices from his dead relatives. No one really believes him, but they all listen, because here, even lies have value, if they're entertaining enough. An obscure cultural tidbit. Warrian children are taught to hum back to thunder, not as a superstition, but as a polite return. Greeting to the sky, as the sun climbs higher and the heat becomes thick like syrup. You're handed a bowl of cool tamarind drink. You sip, you stay, you sink a little deeper into the day. There's no agenda here, just the slow unraveling of hours like thread pulled from a loom. You find yourself drifting toward the outer fields now, where the dew clings stubbornly to stalks of red millet and the air smells faintly of mint and loam. The farmers here rise with a particular kind of quiet patience, resigned, reverent, and slightly annoyed that the yams don't grow themselves. You walk beside a young man named Endu, who carries a woven basket of tiny snails like it's a briefcase, full of classified documents. He's heading to the shell counter's hut, not for taxes this time, it's personal. His family's plot got far less rain last week, and he suspects the neighboring family tampered with their rainfall traps, strategically placing clay gutters to redirect water. In Waria, this is the equivalent of white-collar crime. They call it sky theft. Of course, the actual proof is slippery like most things in a society that measures fairness in mollusks. Historians still debate whether these rain theft accusations were ever proven, or if they were just an early form of passive fence disputes.nd. You stops along the way to greet an elder woman chewing bitter cola. She offers him one with a smirk. He declines. Wisely, cola nuts here are considered social truth serum, and one misstep in conversation could mean 2 days of awkward silence from half your extended family. A joke floats through the air. Why? Did the snail get taxed twice? Because he moved houses after the rain. Nobody laughs loudly. Jokes in Warera aren't told to provoke laughter, they're told to measure your mood. If you laugh, it means you're rested. If you chuckle politely, you're tired. If you just nod, someone will probably offer you a nap mat as you walk on. The smell of roasted banana wafts through the trees. A woman with a lopsided hat roasts them on a tilted clay stove, feeding firewood into the base like someone bribing a very picky god. She waves you over and gives you one for free. It's sweet, soft, and almost too hot to hold. You burn your fingertips and pretend you didn't. The community's rain traps are curious contraptions, half baskets, half leaves, positioned in places deemed official. They're checked daily, and disputes over placement are settled by the Council of Huts, a group of elders known for their ability to argue without raising their voices. One of them, a man named Kumo, is said to have once stared at a man for 3 full minutes until he confessed to miscounting shells. A major historical fact: the Kingdom of Warrior relied on shell-based currency long before external trade, establishing one of the most complex internal barter tax systems recorded in early sub-Saharan communities. You pause by a tree painted in stripes of ochre and chalk. It marks the beginning of the rain shrine path, a twisting trail lined with carved stones and prayer staves. People place offerings here: fruit, feathers, the occasional shiny rock. You watch a child leave a tiny doll made of bundled grass. Her mother whispers a wish, not for more rain, but for gentler rain. Too much, too fast, and it washes away the crops. Rain, here, is both gift and gossip. Too generous and people get suspicious. An obscure cultural tidbit: the Warians believed that if you sneezed during rainfall, it meant the sky was laughing. That's something you did last week. You step under the shadow of the shrine canopy, where wind chimes made of fish bones clatter softly in the breeze. The breeze itself smells of copper and moss. Someone is singing nearby, not a song with words, but a long, curling melody meant to mimic the shape of water flowing over stones. You feel something settle in you, not sleep, not quite, but a loosening, a little unbuttoning of the day's grip, and the shells keep counting. You follow the winding shrine path until it tapers off into a narrow foot trail, where the branches lean in like eavesdroppers and the roots reach out like old hands. The sun is higher now, but in the canopy's shade it's still cool, still half dreaming. You brush aside a fern and step into a clearing, where 3 children are very seriously arguing with a squirrel. It seems the squirrel has stolen one of their decorative rain shells brightly painted, with spirals that took hours to mark. To you, it looks like a child's art project. To them, it's currency, inheritance, and spiritual report card all in one. The squirrel, meanwhile, looks unimpressed. It twitches its tail, then vanishes into a tree with the shell still in its mouth. They will not be filing a complaint with the Council of Huts. The sky may be taxable, but squirrels are an ungovernable population. One girl sighs deeply and says, "Well, at least the sky saw it." The others nod. You're not sure if this is faith, fatalism, or just the general shrug of a people used to losing things to rodents. The sun slices through the canopy in golden patches, and the undergrowth hums with life. Cicadas drone like 1,000 tiny violinists who never practice. A monkey barks in the distance, annoyed perhaps by the heat. You wipe your brow and continue along the path, where someone has left bundles of dried herbs hanging from branches like nature's own air fresheners. A major historical fact: warriors, spiritual beliefs wove weather, justice, and agriculture into a single concept known as Nyambi, a word roughly translating to that which balances. Rain was Nyambi's whisper, drought was its warning, shells were merely its language. You pass a hut with painted symbols circling the doorway. Inside, an old woman with half-blind eyes chants as she stirs a pot of thick, green porridge. She offers you a bowl, and the taste is earthy, bitter, and oddly soothing, like something that shouldn't be good, but is, in a very specific way. She says it keeps the dreams soft. You nod, unsure what that means, but glad your dreams aren't particularly spiky to begin with. An obscure cultural tidbit: in Warera, dream content was discussed over breakfast. If your dream involved chickens, it was considered a good omen. If it involved rivers, it meant change. If you dreamed of forgetting your shoes, it meant you'd talked too much the day before. Outside the hut, a boy balances on one leg beside a pond, imitating a heron. Not because anyone told him to, but because boredom has always been the great motivator of childhood performance art. Historians still debate whether the shell tax had a true enforcement system, or if it relied purely on communal guilt and the sharp looks of elderly women. By late afternoon, the drums sound again, but this time it's not for stories, it's for the shell balance. The counters are announcing rainfall tallies. Some cheer, others groan softly. One man claps sarcastically and mutters that the sky must be sleeping with the Western Hill tribe. A few heads turn. He shrugs, just saying. You find a spot beneath a low fig tree and sit. A soft breeze carries the scent of roasted groundnuts and faint laughter. The light through the leaves flickers like candlelight. The trees know the rhythm of things here, so do you. Now Dot, and the shells keep counting. Evening begins the way it always does, in Warera, slowly, softly, and with a gentle stretching of shadows. The sun lowers like a curtain over a half-finished play, and the birds start sounding like they're arguing over where to sleep. You're walking toward the communal fire now. It's where everyone ends up eventually, like the gravitational pull of a warm meal and shared silence. Smoke curls upward in lazy ribbons, carrying with it the smell of yams, spiced beans, and a little too much salt, but no one here ever complains about salt. It's both seasoning and currency. Literally, salt once held more sway than shells, until someone sneezed in the treasury and the whole system was rethought. A major historical fact. Archaeological evidence suggests the people of Warrior engaged in trade with at least 3 neighboring river tribes, exchanging salt, dried fish, and their prized carved gourd bowls for stories, cloth, and seeds. You settle onto a low stool made from a hollowed log. Beside you, a girl carefully presses tiny painted shells into her braided hair. Each shell represents a rain blessing she wants to remember. "I'm putting in the one from the rain that came on the day I lost my first tooth," she says. "It was warm and noisy." You ask how a rain can be noisy. She shrugs. Some are louder than others. Some want to be noticed. An obscure cultural tidbit. Warian musicians sometimes tuned their instruments to mimic the frequency of rain on different roofing materials, clay, thatch, leaf, or hide. A well-tuned drum could make someone homesick for a storm they hadn't felt in years. The fire crackles. A man plays a flute made of bone. Its sound is breathy, like wind passing through a reed field. A woman taps her thighs gently to keep time. It's not a song you know, but your body understands it anyway. Nearby, an elder is recounting the tale of the Rain King, a mythical figure said to have swallowed a storm whole, then burped it out over the western hills. The story is clearly metaphor, or possibly a historical weather event that's gotten out of hand. Historians still debate whether the Rain King was a real figure, a ceremonial title, or a very enthusiastic nickname for a man who once sneezed during a lightning storm. As the stars blink into being, you feel the stillness settle in. It's not quiet, not entirely. The night is alive with insect buzz, low laughter, the hiss of steam from the cooking pot. But it's a calm noise, a noise that understands your tiredness. You lean back against a post. The warmth from the fire reaches your toes. The shells in the girl's hair catch the light and shimmer softly. It's been a long day, and the shells still keep counting. Night deepens the world into ink and silver. The fire pit still glows behind you, but your path now winds away from the warmth, into a part of the village where voices hush themselves and footsteps move like thoughts soft and unfinished. You walk slowly, your toes brushing against a scatter of fallen leaves, damp with dew. Above you, stars crowd the sky in unkempt brilliance, like someone spilled glitter across a black cloth and forgot to sweep it up. This part of Warrera is quieter, not abandoned, just older. The homes lean with time, doorways sagging under the weight of generations. You pause before one such hut, where a curved stick has been planted at the entrance, adorned with feathers and bark cloth. It's a sign. This is the home of a rain dreamer. You hear soft singing from within. Not a song, exactly. More like a recitation, a hum built of breath and memory. Inside, the rain dreamer rocks gently, eyes half closed, speaking to no one and everyone at once. Rain is not sky water, she says. Rain is a message. Some days it says grow. Some days it says hide. Some days it says nothing, and that is the worst. You don't speak. You listen. A major historical fact. In many oral histories of Warrera, rain was believed to be the medium through which ancestors communicated, not in visions or voices, but in patterns. How long it rained, how hard, from which direction, and on which days. An obscure cultural tidbit. Rain dreamers were trained to sleep in shifts during storm seasons so they could memorize the sound and pattern of every rainfall and recite them later like poetry. You step away quietly, back into the open. The wind is gentle now. It touches your skin like an apology. You follow it toward the river, where frogs sing to each other with tragic enthusiasm. Along the bank, baskets have been set out to catch fish without nets, just bait and patience and old woven magic. One basket wiggles. You think about checking it, but a small boy rushes past and does it for you. He holds up a catfish like a trophy and runs off laughing. You smile and keep walking. Not far from the river lies the shell garden, a long narrow patch of earth where villagers bury cracked or spent shells, those used too many times for tax or trade. It's considered bad luck to keep a shell in use once it has broken. You stand at its edge, looking down at the soil littered with tiny white fragments, like bone confetti, like stars that fell and forgot how to shine. A thin man in a robe too big for him stands nearby, arms folded. You can't force a shell to hold more than it's meant to, he says, more to himself than to you. Same with people. Historians still debate whether the shell garden served a practical, spiritual, or purely symbolic role, or if it was just a convenient place to get rid of broken currency without offending the sky. You sit on a stone bench under a neem tree. A breeze rustles the leaves above you in a whispery rhythm. You close your eyes for a moment. You think of shells, of rain, of people dreaming on mats by firelight. You stay still for a while, and the shells keep counting. Dawn returns like a bashful apology. The sky warms slowly, moving from deep indigo to pale honey. Birds begin rehearsing, the same tune they sing every morning, with varying levels of success. You wake with your back slightly stiff and your hair full of leaf bits, but the air smells of something toasty and new. That's always a good sign. You follow the scent through a winding path, back into the livelier heart of the village. Smoke rises from cooking fires in gentle spirals, and a soft chorus of morning greetings travels through the air. They sound less like conversation and more like a shared agreement. Yes, the sun came back. Yes, we're still here. Yes. Let's try again. Today is the festival of empty bowls. Not nearly as sad as it sounds. A major historical fact. Warera held quarterly empty bowl ceremonies, where people brought their largest eating bowls, completely clean and unfilled, to the central square as a symbol of humility and gratitude. It was both a spiritual act and a subtle form of census-taking. You arrive in the square, just as a large drum announces the beginning of the ritual. People file in with bowls carved, painted, and polished to a gleam. A child carries one so big, it looks like he's preparing to bathe in it. An elder with a bowl no wider than a mango peels a banana slowly and offers it to a chicken at her feet. The symbolism is layered. The bowl represents the self, empty and ready to be filled. Not with food, though that comes later, but with rain, with stories, with patience. It's also a quiet reminder that no one is full alone. An obscure cultural tidbit. The most honored bowl is not the biggest or the oldest, it's the quietest. Each year, a committee votes on which bowl listened best during the previous rains. This is determined by how well it echoes when tapped. Somehow, everyone agrees on the result. Somehow you sit among them with a borrowed bowl made of gourd, smoothed with beeswax. A boy next to you points at your bowl and says, "That one looks sleepy." You take it as a compliment. The high priest of Nyambi appears draped in layers of cloth dyed with indigo and soil, face painted with river ash. He moves like a tree in wind, slow and inevitable. In his hand, a staff topped with 3 cowrie, shells that click when he walks. He does not speak yet. He only walks through the crowd, tapping each bowl once with the staff. You hear it, a soft note from each vessel, a music made entirely of emptiness. No one dares speak. The quiet feels heavier than silence. Then, as if on cue, a single drop of rain falls on the priest's shoulder. Just one. Everyone sees it. Everyone gasps. It doesn't pour. It doesn't even drizzle. Just that one drop, like punctuation on a prayer. The priest looks up, then finally says, "Begin." Suddenly, the square comes alive. Families exchange food. Friends share songs. Laughter rises like bread in a clay oven. You're handed a flat cake of millet and wild honey, still warm from a griddle stone. A man tells you it's his grandmother's recipe. She once made 300 of them in one night for a wedding that never happened. They married other people. The cakes were still good. He shrugs. Historians still debate whether the drop of rain was coincidental or carefully orchestrated, perhaps by someone hiding in a tree with a damp sponge. The bowls, now full of food and drink, are raised in a toast not to gods, not to kings, but to the idea of waiting, of pausing, of knowing that not every bowl is empty because something's wrong. Sometimes it's just not time yet. You eat, you smile, you stay seated long after the cake is gone, holding your quiet bowl like it knows something you don't. The festival slows into afternoon like a drumbeat softening between echoes. Children, sugar-drunk and barefoot, tumble across the dusty square, chasing a leather ball that looks more stitched legend than sport. The old folks sit in the shade, chewing herbs that stain their teeth red and deepen their patience. You lean against a post, watching the swirl of it all, feeling like a guest in someone else's memory. A rooster wanders past you with the confident strut of a local celebrity. No one pays him any mind. He's just one of the elder birds now. As the sun shifts, casting the square in long golden lines, a group begins setting up for what they call the shells of reversal. It's not a game, though it feels like one. Nor is it religion, though you notice people cross their arms in that same reverent way. It's a debate, a ritual debate, to be precise, where each side argues not for what they believe, but for what they hope isn't true. Today's topic: what if the rain belonged to no one? A major historical fact. The Warian Council regularly held reversal debates as a civic exercise. Arguing the opposite of one's belief was considered a sign of mental agility and, curiously, humility. Losing wasn't shameful, refusing to participate was. The speakers step forward, all dressed in patterned cloth sashes, each sash marked with a shell symbol denoting how many debates they've lost. More losses meant more respect. Losing graciously was practically a currency of its own. You listen as a woman with a sharp voice and a softer smile argues that if no one owns the rain, then the sky owes no debts and, thus, no harvest is ever late, only misunderstood. A boy counters that without claiming the rain. No one would care for the channels, no one would thank the sky, and the plants would grow lonely. The crowd murmurs approval. Historians still debate whether these rituals ever influenced actual policy decisions, or if they were just elaborate ways to keep grievances from turning into passive-aggressive yam theft, an obscure cultural tidbit. The winner of each debate was awarded a single rain shell dipped in honey, which they were required to eat to sweeten their argument. Some tried to fake eating it. None succeeded. Shell crunch is hard to fake. You look around at the crowd. No one is checking time. No one is pretending not to listen. The debate ends with laughter, not because anything is resolved, but because everyone has said their piece, and the sky hasn't struck anyone down yet. As the crowd disperses, you notice a woman handing out small cloth bundles to passing children. One comes to you, holding a packet no larger than your palm. Inside are 3 smooth shells, a string, and a square of dried mango. For when the sky forgets you, the child says, reciting the phrase with a sing-song rhythm. Then he skips away. You hold the packet for a long moment. The shells are warm from the sun, asterisk. You walk through the low trails again, feet brushing over brittle leaves and tiny half-buried shells. They seem to be everywhere here, like sand in a beach town or glitter after a craft disaster. You pass a group of women weaving mats by a shallow creek, their laughter rolling over the water like light breeze. One of them calls out to you. You look like someone with thoughts. Sit down before they get heavy. You sit. The mats they weave are wide, flat, and dyed in gentle gradients, like faded rainbows seen through gauze. Each mat tells a story, but only if you know how to read the spacing between the reeds. You don't, so you admire the texture. Instead, one woman weaves in absolute silence, eyes distant. Her hands work from memory, from muscle, from something older than memory. Another hums a tune that sounds vaguely familiar. You realize it matches the rhythm of last night's rain, soft, hesitant, patient, a major historical fact. Warian mat weaving wasn't just domestic art, it was also a record-keeping method. Important rainfall years, marriages, and harvest failures were encoded into the spacing and dye patterns of mats. Passed down through generations, an obscure cultural tidbit. If someone tripped on a mat in your home, it meant they weren't supposed to know the story woven into it. People often rearranged mats before guests arrived, not for tidiness, but for secrecy. You ask how long one mat takes. A woman shrugs. Depends how honest the story is. The silent one finishes hers, holds it up to the sun, and sighs. This one's too loud, she says. Then she sets it aside to start again. Historians still debate whether the mats ever functioned as formal archives, or if they were just the closest thing to journaling in a culture where paper meant nothing, and fabric meant everything. You notice that each woman wears a single shell tied at her wrist, dyed black. It marks her as a keeper, a mat elder trusted with translating old weavings and choosing which stories can be retold aloud. They don't wear this shell until they've unraveled at least 50 stories. One woman proudly claims she's translated 92, but her daughter quietly whispers she forgets 4 of them every year. The sun is beginning to lower again, golden and slow. One of the women places a finished mat at your feet, for when you need to remember something you don't know yet, she says. You thank her. You don't fully understand, but somehow, that's all right. You rise again. Asterisk, you make your way back toward the center of the village. Mat tucked under your arm, the woven reeds gently creaking with each step. The air is thicker, now still warm, but with that telltale stillness that suggests the sky is trying to make a decision. The clouds are gathering above you, just shy of dramatic, not stormy, not sunny, just ... indecisive, like a guest who's unsure whether to leave or ask for another cup of tea. The scent of roasted tubers mingles with a whiff of something sweet, palm wine, maybe, and you find yourself drifting, uninvited, but somehow expected, toward the communal longhouse where today's exchange of mistakes is underway. Don't worry, it's not as ominous as it sounds. A major historical fact: once a month, Warian villagers held a community ritual called the Exchange of Mistakes, where people confessed minor errors, accidental or otherwise, aloud, often in the form of stories or poems. It wasn't about punishment. It was about air clearing, and occasionally, unintentional comedy. You slip in through the reed door. The room smells of resin, sweat, and dust, the sort of cocktail you grow fond of in a place like this. People sit in a wide semicircle. In the center, a girl no older than 12 stands with arms folded, cheeks puffed defiantly. I fed the wrong chicken the healing herbs, she says flatly. The sick one is still sick. The healthy one now believes it's a hawk. There's a pause, then laughter, then nods of approval. One man steps forward next, holding his hat like it might fly away if he doesn't anchor it. I may have slightly exaggerated the rainfall when counting shells, he mutters. I just wanted to win shell of the month. My gourd was feeling underappreciated. More laughter. Someone throws him a half-eaten fruit in support, an obscure cultural tidbit. Warian gourds were considered semi-sentient. People regularly apologized to them for storing bitter liquids, or sang to them after arguments. A sad gourd was blamed for at least one bad harvest. You find a spot near the back, and watch as the stories continue. Funny, strange, and occasionally tender. A woman admits to having dreamed of her neighbor's yam pile, and stealing one, out of guilt the next day. She gave it back. Mostly, I only took the little one, she says. The one that looked like it wanted to leave. Historians still debate whether the exchange of mistakes had its roots in judicial tradition, or if it emerged as a psychological release valve for a society with very few written rules but a strong sense of shared accountability. You're asked if you want to share anything. You shake your head. Not tonight. Maybe next month. The ritual ends with a call and response hymn. Each line answered not in words, but in the clinking of shells. Everyone drops one shell into the communal bowl with a small spoken phrase. For what I let slip, you follow suit. The bowl hums with the soft weight of shared imperfection. You step out into the dusk. The clouds have made up their mind. Rain begins to fall. Asterisk, the rain doesn't come down hard, tiptoes across the rooftops, lands in your hair like curious fingers, and rolls down your face as if checking your mood. People do not rush for shelter. Here, in War Air, rain is not to be avoided, it is to be hosted. You wander through the village as doors open and mats are pulled out, not to keep things dry, but to catch the water. Children stretch their hands upward like they're high-fiving the sky. Elders sit in quiet rows beneath overhangs, watching the downpour like it's a theater performance that never gets old. A major historical fact, the Warian rain sitting, was a common practice. Villagers would gather to simply sit in silence and observe the storm. Some brought instruments, others incense. Most brought nothing but time. You sit beneath a large mango tree, its leaves slick with delight. A man next to you hums a low note that matches the pitch of the falling rain. You try it too. It takes a few tries, but then you hit it a strange resonance, like singing with a river. Beside you, a woman places a tiny carved turtle on the ground. She whispers something you don't catch, then lets the rain wash over it. You ask her why. It's for balance, she says. The rain doesn't know who's been good. It only knows where the wind told it to go. That feels important. An obscure cultural tidbit. During rain sitting, it was considered bad manners to speak above the sound of the droplets. Whispers were fine. Arguments were postponed. And if you sneezed, someone would gently offer you a leaf. The wind picks up a little, sending cool spirals through the trees. Somewhere, a drum starts to beat, not a performance, just a pulse. Maybe it's someone marking time, or maybe it's just what happens when your hands need something to do while your thoughts float upstream. Historians still debate whether rain sitting had any spiritual hierarchy, or if people just instinctively understood that sometimes doing nothing together is the most sacred thing. The woman with the turtle leans over and offers you a square of roasted plantain wrapped in banana leaf. You take it. You chew slowly. Rain always makes food taste truer. You lean your head back, letting the drops hit your face. No one watches, no one judges. They've all done it too. It's dark now, but no one has lit a fire. They're letting the sky light the evening. You feel your breath lengthen. Your thoughts loosen. Asterisk, the night wraps the village in a shawl of soft rainfall and low murmurings. The fire pits are quiet. The drum's gone still, but no one minds the hush. It's not silence exactly, more like the sound of things agreeing not to speak unless necessary. You're in a small guest hut now. Not yours, exactly, but someone's uncle's cousin's spare room. Warera's version of Airbnb is mostly based on loose familiarity and the unspoken rule that everyone belongs somewhere, eventually. The thatch above you leaks in. Polite drips. Just enough to let you know the rain hasn't forgotten you. You lie back on a woven mat, likely a story you haven't heard yet, and feel the subtle bounce of the floor beneath you. The walls smell like clay and crushed herbs. Outside, water plinks into hollow gourds with a rhythm so perfect, it feels choreographed. A major historical fact. Warera homes were constructed with water in mind, thatch that breathes, gutters that sing, even floorboards designed to absorb or echo different types of rainfall. The architecture wasn't just practical, it was participatory. You hear movement outside, then a voice, soft, somewhere between a yawn and a poem. Rain too soon is a promise broken. Another voice answers. Rain too late is a lesson repeated. It's a lullaby for grown-ups. One of many passed between doorways, and cousins and lovers who argue in whispers, an obscure cultural tidbit. Warians never said good night. The custom was to say, "Let the sky tell you something nice." Most believed dreams were dictated not by the brain, but by the sky's mood as you fell asleep. You shift slightly, noticing a small bowl near your head, filled with dried lavender, a cracked shell, and something that smells like toasted bark. It's a sleep charm, harmless, mostly, meant to protect you from dreams of falling, floods, and former lovers. Historians still debate whether sleep charms were grounded in true belief, or just highly aromatic peer pressure. You feel your eyes growing heavier. The thatch creaks gently above you, not threateningly, just conversationally. Somewhere, a baby giggles in its sleep. You wake with the sky already halfway open. Morning again, but not bright, not showy. Just a soft pear-colored light that slides in between the beams, like it's checking to see if you're ready yet. You stretch. Your spine cracks like dry wood. A bird sings outside with a confidence it hasn't earned. It sounds like it's still figuring out what kind of bird it is, but it sings anyway. You admire the commitment. You step outside to find the village already alive, but gently so. People are sweeping puddles not away, but into small troughs that feed garden beds. Children scoop leftover rain from shallow bowls into others marked with ash. A careful redistribution, a ceremonial tucking dash in dot. A major historical fact, the kingdom of Warriora practiced deliberate water recapture from nightly rainfall, using a system of clay basins and natural trenches. They referred to it not as drainage, but as convincing the water to stay a little longer. A thin, smiling man hands you a small clay flute. "It's today," he says. You blink. He laughs. The Sky Parade. Apparently, that explains everything. The Sky Parade is one of the few times Warriora gets truly theatrical. Everyone paints something on their body. Clouds, lightning bolts, birds, frogs, rivers, wind spirals. You are promptly handed a pot of charcoal and a mirror the size of a potato slice. You do your best. You end up looking like a worried tornado. No one laughs. They just nod out down the hill. A wide dirt path is being swept with palm fronds and decorated with bits of colored cloth, broken pottery, feathers, and even scraps of reflective metal gifts from travelers, traders, and someone who apparently thought a spoon could honor the sky. An obscure cultural tidbit. During the Sky Parade, any item that shimmered was believed to attract attention from the upper spirits. A group of weather guardians that, according to Warian lore, were easily distracted by shiny things and often forgot their job schedules. The parade begins not with music, but with silence. For one full minute, everyone walks together quietly hundreds of feet, in soft rhythms listening to the ground. The belief is that the earth should hear the gratitude first. Then, like someone flipped a switch, the drums begin. They sound different today. Sharper, faster, still sleepy, but with caffeine in their heartbeat. You join the procession, moving between two women dressed as wind spirits. One smells like eucalyptus. The other has a bird feather tucked behind each ear. There are no floats, no fireworks. Just movement, colors, laughter, and the soft jingle of cowrie shells sewn into everyone's clothes, sticking softly, like walking through rainfall made of time. Historians still debate whether the Sky Parade began as a practical ritual for invoking rain, or as a community response to surviving a particularly brutal, dry season. As you march, someone places a damp flower behind your ear. Another rubs scented oil into your hands without asking. You don't resist. You just keep walking. The parade ends at the rain altar, a stone so smooth it looks like it's been wept on for centuries. Everyone kneels. Not out of worship, exactly. More like mutual respect between ground and sky. And as if on cue, a breeze passes through. Cool, kind, and utterly on time. You don't need to look. The breeze lingers, teasing a few stray feathers into lazy spirals across the clearing. You sit near the rain altar, your legs crossed, and your borrowed garment sticking slightly to your knees. The ground beneath you feels recently wet, but not muddy, just soft, like the earth took a breath and decided to hold it. You watch as an elder walks slowly around the altar, sprinkling a mix of ground herbs and powdered shells in a circle. This is not for effect. This is for memory. A major historical fact. In Warriora, ceremonies involving shell dust called sinka were considered the most sacred offerings. Shells used in tax collection were never repurposed for these rituals. Only listened shells, those that had traveled through rain basins and echo bowls, were worthy. The elder finishes the circle and looks up at the sky. Not for rain, but for silence. Everyone waits with her. The kind of pause that feels like someone has just opened a book and is about to begin reading, and then she speaks. Today's story is about a man who fell in love with a rain cloud. His name, she says, was Oboro, and he was a thatcher, a fixer of roofs, which in Warriora is considered a highly romantic profession. Oboro spent so much time under the sky that one day he began to dream of a particular cloud. Every night it appeared closer than the night before. Every morning he looked for it in the real sky. Eventually, he stopped fixing roofs. He only watched. People said his eyes grew wet, not with sadness, just overexposure. An obscure cultural tidbit. In Warriora, those who claimed to fall in love with weather were not mocked. They were treated like temporary prophets. People brought them questions, not therapy. The elder finishes the story just as a single drop lands on her nose. Everyone cheers. Historians still debate whether the Oboro tale was an allegory for devotion, drought, or just a poetic excuse to miss work for a week. You stay seated as others get up and begin the slow return to the village. The altar remains smooth and unreadable. Behind you, someone hums the tune from last night's rain again. You hum it too. The tune passes like gossip among the trees. You find yourself back near the hearths now, following the scent of roasted roots and charred maize. The village is returning to its normal rhythm, or what passes for normal here, where even daily chores are done with ceremony and the occasional goat interruption. You're invited to help pound cassava. The mortar is taller than your knees, and the pestle is clearly carved from some tree that no longer exists. Two women work on opposite beats. When one strikes down, the other lifts. You're placed in the rotation. It's harder than it looks. The rhythm is not just efficiency, it's communication. If you go too fast, you insult the crop. If you go too slow, someone assumes you're hiding a confession. A major historical fact. Communal cooking in Warriora was both labor and legalism. Many disputes were settled in the rhythm of pounding, where one party would speak and the other would match or counter their cadence. A disharmony could mean the discussion was unresolved. You eventually get the hang of it. You're even given a song to sing while you pound, though the lyrics are roughly translated about someone stealing beans during a dance. You do your best. Your pestle thuds with increasing confidence. Once the cassava is mashed, it's molded into soft mounds and steamed in banana leaves. One woman shows you how to tap the leaves 3 times before folding them, to let the steam know we're grateful, she says. Steam is easy to anger. It leaves, if ignored, an obscure cultural tidbit. Warriors treated steam like a minor deity, friendly, quick to disappear, and always slightly annoyed. Don't chase the steam was both a cooking proverb and a romantic one. You eat under a tree. Your meal shared with 2 children who seem to believe cassava is best appreciated when thrown slightly before being eaten. One offers you a leaf, cup of tamarind water. You drink. You feel, again, that peculiar balance. Nothing too hot, too cold, too fast, too loud, just right. Historians still debate whether Warriorian cuisine influenced neighboring regions or was isolated due to its reliance on shell-taxed rainwater. The argument continues. Likely overshared meals and increasingly exaggerated stories. the children begin stacking their cassava rinds into towers and declaring them sky buildings. One child solemnly announces that hers is so tall, the clouds have to walk around it. You approve. You sit a little longer than necessary. Not because you're tired, but because the wind hasn't told you to move yet. Asterisk, the sky has softened again. You can feel it in the weight of the wind, in the hush of the trees that now sway like storytellers finishing their last tale. You're walking slower these days, not from exhaustion, but from reverence. Every path now feels familiar. Every corner of Warera carries your footprint, and every shell you pass seems to nod its tiny head in quiet recognition. You're invited to the elders' circle tonight, not as a visitor, as a witness. It's not an easy invitation to earn. Witnesses are chosen, not for their words, but for their silence, for how well they've listened, for how gently they've asked questions. The elders sit in a ring, robes heavy with age and ash. You sit just outside it, on a mat woven with rain. Symbols 1, you now know, means memory before memory. You don't interrupt. You don't speak. They discuss dreams that feel like memories, and memories that behave like dreams. One woman speaks of the year the rain came sideways for 7 days, and how they all turned their bowls eastward to teach the storm manners. Another recalls a time when shells vanished completely for 2 full moons, and people had to trade in riddles instead. Some say the shells were offended, she shrugs, or just resting. A major historical fact. Toward the end of Warera's known existence, records suggest there were shell droughts, periods when the tax currency fell completely out of circulation, forcing the people to rely on oral pledges and ritual debts instead. An obscure cultural tidbit. Riddle trading was so widespread during the shell droughts that families began inheriting favorite riddles, like heirlooms. Some were so well guarded, they were only whispered into gourds and passed down with breath. Historians still debate whether these final gatherings of the Warian Council were civic sessions or quiet funerals for a fading kingdom. The meeting ends with no ceremony, just stillness. One elder presses a shell into your hand as she leaves. It's cracked, but it still sings when you tap it. You spend your last afternoon at the edge of the shell garden, where the broken and retired shells are returned to the earth like old songs. You sit with your knees pulled close, fingers brushing the topsoil. All around you are fragments of stories' economies, confessions, prayers, jokes, taxes, tiny acts of hope. A child sits beside you without asking. She doesn't say anything for a long time. Then, do you know what a shell sounds like when it sleeps? You don't. She smiles like she expected that answer. It sounds like a whisper trying to remember its name. You ask her if she comes. Here often. She shakes her head. Only when something ends. You don't ask what's ending. A major historical fact. Shell burial was once an intensely private act in Warera. Later, it became public. And then, near the kingdom's end, it returned to privacy again. Shells buried alone, without songs or symbols. Just soil, an obscure cultural tidbit. It was believed that if you found a whole shell in the burial ground, untouched and unmarked, you were allowed to keep it, but only if you promised not to use it for trade. It became what they called a listening shell. You place the cracked shell from the elder into the garden. The girl watches, then leans close and blows gently on the dirt. You buried it too fast, she says, and carefully repositions it. It has to breathe a little. You stay there until the light bends gold and the shadows return. No drums. Tonight. No stories. Just the soft echo of final things. The shells, now, are almost quiet. Asterisk, your final morning arrives, not with a bang, not with a ritual or song, but with a stillness so deep, it feels like the whole village is holding its breath. Just for you. You pack nothing. You carry nothing. And Warera leaving is done with open hands. As you pass the familiar trails, people nod. No speeches, no farewells. Just soft glances and maybe a smile that lingers half a second longer than usual. The wind is warm, the ground is soft. You know each scent by name now. You reach the footpath that leads away from Warera. Before you step out, you turn around. The village is already continuing without you. Chickens scratching, smoke curling, children shouting at the sky like it owes them something. Everything is alive. Everything is whole. A major historical fact. No physical remains of Warrior's village have ever been conclusively identified. Some claim it was swallowed by jungle. Others say it was never a place at all but a seasonal gathering that left no bones behind. An obscure cultural tidbit. A story passed down in a neighboring culture claims that if you walk far enough during the rainy season, with an empty bowl and a quiet heart, Warriora will find you. Historians still debate whether the kingdom of Warriora truly existed or if it was always meant to live only in story, in memory, in the gentle echo of shells touching each other in a bowl. You turn away. The cracked shell, still humming quietly in your hand. You step forward, and though you leave the kingdom behind, the shells keep counting, even now, even still, forever. Perhaps soon. Perhaps if only in dreams. Asterisk, if you're asleep. Well, you're exactly who this story was meant for. Like and subscribe to keep drifting through lost kingdoms with us, and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? What time is it there? Until next time, may your skies be kind, and your dreams remember you.